The Great Hall of the Galactic Council was cold. Not cold like winter on Earth, but cold in a way that made the soul feel small. Ambassador Somi Park stood at the center of the room, surrounded by beings from 100 different worlds. They looked down at her from their tall seats. Some had scales. Some had fur. Some had no faces at all. But they all shared one thing. They all looked at her like she was nothing. Somi kept her back straight. She had practiced this moment in her mind for weeks. She knew what was coming. Everyone knew. But knowing did not make it easier. Counselor Vranis sat at the highest seat. He was ancient. His skin was gray and thin like old paper. His eyes were black pools that showed no warmth. He had lived for 2,000 years, and in all that time, he had never once considered humans worthy of his attention. "The vote is complete," Vranis said. His voice filled the hall like thunder. "The Council has decided. Humanity is no longer a member of the Galactic Union." Somi did not flinch. She had expected this. "Your species has contributed nothing of value," Vranis continued. "Your technology is primitive. Your culture is chaotic. Your genetics are unstable. You are a burden to the greater galactic community." Behind Somi, a small group of human officers stood in silence. Among them was Admiral Taiho Kwan. He was 60 years old, with gray hair and hands that had seen war. He watched Vranis speak, and he said nothing. But there was something in his eyes, something that looked almost like amusement. "Your 12 colony worlds will be transferred to species more deserving," Vranis announced. "You will leave peacefully. You will take only what you can carry. You will not return." A murmur passed through the council. Some of the aliens laughed. Others simply nodded, satisfied that this small problem called humanity was finally being dealt with. Somi stepped forward. "I request the right to speak on behalf of my people." Vranis looked at her the way a giant might look at an ant. "Denied. There is nothing you could say that would interest this council. Your time here is finished." The words hit Somi like a slap, but she did not cry. She did not shout. She simply nodded once and turned to leave. As she walked toward the exit, she passed rows of alien delegates. Some whispered insults. Others made gestures of disgust. A few simply ignored her, as if she had already ceased to exist. Admiral Taiho fell into step beside her. His voice was low. "They think this is the end. Let them think what they want," Somi replied. Her voice was steady, but her hands were shaking. They reached the airlock that led to their transport ship. The other human officers filed through in silence. No one spoke. No one protested. The galaxy watched, expecting tears or anger or begging. Instead, they saw only quiet acceptance. Vranis followed them to the airlock. He wanted to see them leave. He wanted to watch the moment when humanity walked out of galactic history forever. "You should be grateful," he said to Somi. "It could have simply destroyed you. Instead, we are letting you go. You may live out your remaining years in the Hollow." The Hollow. Everyone knew that name. It was the region beyond the galactic rim where no species had ever survived. The stars were few. The resources were thin. Ships that went there never came back. The Council was not giving humanity a second chance. They were giving them a slow death. Somi stopped at the airlock door. She turned and looked at Vranis one last time. The ancient counselor expected to see defeat in her eyes. He expected to see fear. Instead, he saw something else. Something that made him pause for just a moment. "We will remember this," Somi said. Her voice was soft, but it carried through the silence like a blade. Then she stepped through the airlock. The door closed behind her. Vranis stood there for a long moment. The words echoed in his mind. Such a simple sentence. Such a small threat from such a small species. He pushed the feeling away and returned to his seat. Over the next 3 months, humanity packed up everything they had built. They dismantled their stations. They emptied their colonies. They loaded their ships with as many people and supplies as they could carry. The council watched and laughed. They made jokes about the foolish humans who thought they could survive in the Hollow. Admiral Taiho commanded the evacuation fleet. Over 200 ships carried the last of humanity away from the worlds they had called home. Millions of people looked out their windows at stars they would never see again. On the final day, Taiho stood on the bridge of his flagship. He watched the blue dot of Earth grow smaller and smaller in the distance. His home, his people's birthplace. They were leaving it all behind. His second officer, a young woman named Nari, stood beside him. "Sir, do you think we will survive out there?" Taiho did not answer right away. He thought about his grandfather, who had fought in the first wars against alien pirates. He thought about his daughter, who was sleeping in the ship's nursery, unaware that her entire future had just changed. "We will do more than survive," he finally said. "We will become something they never expected." Nari looked at him with confusion. "What do you mean?" Taiho smiled. It was not a happy smile. It was the smile of a man who had just made a decision that would echo through centuries. "They let us leave in silence," he said. "They think silence means weakness. They think silence means surrender." He turned to face the dark unknown ahead of them. "They are wrong. Silence means we are done talking. Silence means we are done asking for permission. Silence means we are going to spend every moment from now until forever becoming something so powerful that when we return, they will wish they had killed us when they had the chance." The fleet jumped into hyperspace. The stars stretched into lines of light, and humanity vanished into the hollow. Behind them, the galaxy continued on as if nothing had happened. The council celebrated their decision. They congratulated themselves on solving the human problem. They forgot about Earth and its people within a single generation. They did not know that in the darkness, humanity was watching, learning, growing, and remembering. 300 years passed in the darkness of the hollow. The council forgot about humanity. They erased Earth from their maps. They removed human languages from their databases. Within 2 generations, most species did not even know that humans had ever existed. It was as if the galaxy had simply deleted a small, unimportant file and moved on. But in the hollow, humanity did not disappear. They changed. Captain Nari Yoon stood on the bridge of her ship, the Remembrance. She was born in the hollow, as was her mother and her grandmother before her. She had never seen Earth. She had never breathed real air under a natural sun. But she knew the stories. Every human child learned the stories. They learned about the council. They learned about the exile. They learned about the promise. "We will remember this." "Captain, we are approaching the coordinates," her navigator reported. Nari nodded. They were deep in unexplored territory, following signals that their scientists had detected decades ago. Strange signals. Old signals. Signals that predated the Galactic Council by millions of years. The first ships to enter the hollow had expected death. They found something else entirely. The hollow was not empty. It was a graveyard. Thousands of dead worlds floated in the darkness, each one covered with the ruins of an ancient civilization. The humans called them the first architects. No one knew their real name. No one knew what they looked like. They had been dead for so long that even their bones had turned to dust. But their technology remained. Dr. Hanbeek had spent her entire life studying the architects. She was 63 years old, with white hair and eyes that sparkled with endless curiosity. She had decoded their language. She had unlocked their machines. And she had given humanity gifts beyond imagination. "The structure is directly ahead," Hayon said, her voice crackling through the communication system. "This is it." The central archive. Nari looked through the viewport. A massive station hung in the void, bigger than any human city. It was dark and silent, like everything the architects had left behind. But somewhere inside there were answers. "Take us in," Nari ordered. The Remembrance glided through an opening in the station's hull. Inside, they found corridors that stretched for miles. They found machines that still hummed with power after millions of years. They found data crystals containing knowledge that would take centuries to fully understand. And they found weapons. The architects had not died of old age. They had been killed. Something had come from outside the galaxy and destroyed them. Before they fell, they had built weapons to fight back. Weapons that bent space. Weapons that froze time. Weapons that could tear holes between dimensions. Humanity learned to use these weapons. They learned to build their own. And they grew. By the time Nari was born, humanity no longer lived on 200 ships. They lived on 4,000 worlds, hidden in dimensional folds that the Council could not see or reach. Their population had grown from millions to billions. Their technology had advanced so far that the Council's greatest achievements looked like children's toys, but they did not forget why they were. Here General Wujinan was the supreme commander of the human reclamation fleet. He was the grandson of Admiral Taiho, who had led humanity into exile 3 centuries ago. Wujin had inherited his grandfather's smile and his grandfather's patience. He sat in his office on the military station called Never Forget. On his desk was a letter written by Taiho just before his death. Wujin had read it 1,000 times. The letter said, "When they need us most, make them wait. Make them remember what silence feels like." A message arrived from Captain Nari. Wujin opened it and read her report. His expression did not change, but his heart began to beat faster. The reconnaissance mission had finally reached the edge of Council space. For the first time in 300 years, human eyes had looked upon the galaxy they once called home, and what they saw was chaos. "The Council is at war," Nari reported. "Something is attacking them. Something from outside the galaxy. They call it the Devouring Tide." Wujin closed his eyes. The tide. He had read about it in the Architect archives. A swarm of biomechanical monsters that consumed everything in their path. Planets, stars, entire civilizations. The architects had fought them and lost. Now the tide had found the Council. "How bad is it?" Wujin asked. "Bad," Nari replied. "They have lost 60% of their territory. The core worlds are falling one by one. Counselor Vranes is still alive somehow. He is leading what remains of their defense. But they are losing. Within 50 years, they will be completely destroyed." Wujin leaned back in his chair. 300 years ago, the Council had cast humanity out like garbage. They had laughed and said, "Good riddance." They had expected humans to die quietly in the darkness. Now they were the ones dying. Part of Wujin wanted to let them burn. Part of him wanted to watch from the shadows as every species that had mocked his ancestors was devoured by the tide. They deserved it. They had earned it, but that was not who humanity had become. He opened a communication channel to all human commanders. His voice was calm but firm. "This is General On. 300 years ago, we were exiled by beings who thought we were worthless. We were sent to die in the darkness. Instead, we became something greater than they could imagine." He paused, letting the words sink in. "Now those same beings face extinction. They will beg for our help. They will plead and cry and promise anything. And we will help them. Not because they deserve it. Not because we have forgiven them. We will help them because that is what separates us from them." He looked at his grandfather's letter one more time. "But first, we will make them wait. We will make them remember. We will show them exactly what their silence cost them." He ended the transmission. Across 4,000 worlds, humanity prepared for war. Ships that had been built in secret began to move toward the dimensional gates. Soldiers who had trained their entire lives finally had a purpose. Scientists who had unlocked the secrets of the universe gathered their most powerful weapons. The Hollow had been quiet for 300 years. Now the silence was about to end. The first human ship appeared without warning. It was small, shaped like a black knife, and it made no sound. It simply materialized at the edge of Council space and stopped. It did not move. It did not attack. It did not respond to any message. It just watched. Counselor Vranes received the report while sitting in his emergency bunker. The Council station had been moved 17 times in the past decade, always running from the tide. Half the Council members were dead. The other half wished they were. "What do you mean, a human ship?" Vranes demanded. His voice was weak now. 2,000 years of life had finally started to show on his ancient body. "Humans are extinct. They died in the Hollow centuries ago." "The ship matches no known design," his aide replied. but it is broadcasting a single identification code. The code is registered to the Earth's Confederacy. Ronis felt something cold crawl up his spine. Earth, he had not heard that name in 300 years. He had almost forgotten it existed. Destroy it, he ordered. 3 Council warships moved to intercept. They fired their weapons. The missiles passed through empty space. The human ship had moved without moving, appearing instantly in a different location. Then it resumed watching. More ships appeared. Dozens at first, then hundreds. They formed a perfect line along the border of Council space. Black shapes against the stars. Silent. Waiting. Commander Do-Yan Shin stood on the bridge of his observation vessel. He was 42 years old, with a calm face and steady hands. His orders were simple. Document everything. Do not intervene. Let them understand. Through his viewport, he could see a council world burning. The tide had reached it 3 days ago. Massive creatures, half machine and half flesh, swarmed across its surface. They ate everything. Cities, forests, oceans, people. Nothing was spared. Refugee ships tried to escape the planet. Some made it. Most did not. Do-Yan recorded it all. Sir, his communications officer said, we are receiving a transmission from Counselor Vranis. Put it through. Vranis appeared on the screen. He looked broken. His gray skin had turned almost white. His black eyes were filled with desperation. Please, Vranis said. We know who you are. We know what we did to your people. But millions are dying. Children are dying. Whatever anger you hold against us, please do not punish the innocent for the sins of the Council. Do-Yan looked at the ancient being who had once cast humanity into darkness. He felt many things. Anger, satisfaction, pity. Replay message archive 17, he said to his communications officer. The screen flickered. A recording began to play. It showed a young woman with black hair standing in the council chamber. Ambassador Somi Park. The recording was 300 years old. We will remember this, Somi said. The recording looped. It played again and again. Vrani stared at it with growing horror. That is our only response, Do-Yan said. Then he cut the transmission. For 3 more weeks, humanity watched. They documented every battle. They recorded every death. They let the council burn, but they were not heartless. When a school ship full of children drifted too close to the tide, human vessels appeared and guided it to safety. When a hospital station lost power and began falling into a star, human engineers worked through the night to repair it. When refugee camps ran out of food, unmarked crates appeared, containing enough supplies to last months. They saved the innocent. But they let the council suffer. Envoy Jisoo Kong was chosen to deliver humanity's message. She was 70 years old, with silver hair and a face carved from ice. She had spent her entire life preparing for this moment. Her shuttle docked with the council station. She walked through corridors that had once rejected her ancestors. Aliens stared at her with mixtures of fear and hope. Some fell to their knees and begged. She walked past them without a word. She reached the council chamber. It was mostly empty now. Only 12 of the original 100 council members remained. Vrani sat at the center, barely able to hold himself upright. Please, he whispered, help us. Jisoo did not look at him. Instead, she turned to face the galleries where thousands of refugees had gathered. Ordinary people from 100 different species. Mothers holding children. Workers who had lost everything. Survivors who had nowhere else to go. She spoke to them. Humanity offers you sanctuary, she said. Our worlds are open. Our food is yours. Our protection is guaranteed. You may come with us and live in peace. A wave of relief passed through the crowd. Some cried. Some laughed. Some simply collapsed with exhaustion. Then Jisoo turned to the council. You may also come, she said. Her voice was cold. But you must ask. Not demand. Not negotiate. Ask, and you must do it publicly, so the entire galaxy can see. Ronnie's closed his eyes. He understood what she wanted. She wanted him to beg. She wanted every species in the galaxy to watch as the mighty council that had ruled for 10,000 years got on its knees and begged humanity for mercy. He thought about refusing. He thought about dying with dignity. But then he looked at the refugees, the children. The innocent Vranis, the most powerful being in the known galaxy, lowered himself to the floor. His ancient joints cracked. His pride shattered. And in a voice that was broadcast to every corner of the galaxy, he spoke. "Please," he said, "humanity, please help us. We were wrong. We were arrogant and cruel and blind. Please, forgive us. Please save us." The galaxy watched in stunned silence. Jisoo looked down at the being who had cast her ancestors into darkness. She felt no joy. She felt no satisfaction. She only felt tired. "We do not forgive," she said, "but we will help, because that is what humans do." She turned and walked away. Behind her, the evacuation began. Billions of refugees streamed toward the dimensional gates that humanity had opened. They carried nothing but hope, and somewhere in the void, the devouring tide continued its march. The war was far from over, but for the first time in decades, the galaxy had a chance. The tribunal was not a trial. It was a reckoning. The hall was built on one of humanity's oldest colony worlds, a planet called New Sol. It had been designed to hold 10,000 people. Every seat was filled. Representatives from every species that had survived the tide sat in silence. Waiting, at the center of the hall, the surviving members of the old council sat on simple chairs. No throne, no elevated platform. They were at ground level, surrounded by the galaxy they had once ruled. Vrani sat at the front. He had aged another decade in the past month. His body was failing. Only the machines keeping him alive allowed him to witness what was about to happen. "Hi," Chancellor Yunjiro stood at the main podium. She was the leader of the Human Confederacy, elected by the people of 4,000 worlds. She was 58 years old, with kind eyes and a voice that could calm storms. "This is not a court," she began. "We are not here to decide guilt. Guilt has already been established by history. We are here to ensure that history is never forgotten." She gestured to a man standing beside her. He was old, with thin hair and glasses that seemed too large for his face. His name was Minho Chai, and he was the keeper of the Archive of Exile. Minho had spent his entire life collecting names. Every human who died during the exile, every ship that was sabotaged by council agents, every child who starved, every family that froze in the void. He had found them all. He stepped forward and began to read. Kim Sunja, age 7. Died of starvation aboard the colony ship Hope. Year 1 of the exile. The hall was silent. Park Dongwoo, age 43. Died of radiation exposure after council agents destroyed the shielding on his transport. Year 1 of the exile. Continued reading. Name after name. Age after age. Cause after cause. Hours passed. Minho did not stop. His voice grew hoarse, but he kept reading. When he could not speak anymore, another keeper took his place. Then another. Then another. The reading lasted 3 days. The council members were not allowed to leave. They were not allowed to look away. They sat in their simple chairs and listened to every name. Every death, every crime that their arrogance had caused. Some of them wept. Some of them vomited. Some of them simply stared at nothing, their minds broken by the weight of what they were hearing. Vrani's did not react. He sat perfectly still, his ancient eyes fixed on some point in the distance. But those who looked closely could see something cracking behind his expression. Something that had been solid for 2,000 years was finally breaking apart. When the last name was read, the hall fell into complete silence. Chancellor Yunji stepped forward again. 17,423,891, she said. That is the number of humans who died because of your decision. That is the cost of your silence. She let the number hang in the air. The council will be dissolved, she continued. Each species will govern itself. Humanity will not rule this galaxy. We do not want to rule, but we will remember, and we will make sure everyone else remembers too. A door opened at the side of the hall. Something entered. It was not human. It was not alive in any normal sense. It was a machine, but it moved with purpose and grace. Its body was made of crystal and light, and its voice sounded like wind through ancient trees. "I am the last architect," it said. "I have waited for this moment for 17 million years." The galaxy stared in shock. The architects were supposed to be extinct. Every record said they were gone forever. "We built this machine before we died," the architect explained. "We programmed it to wait, to watch, to find a species worthy of our knowledge. Humanity found us. Humanity earned our trust. And now, humanity will learn the truth." The machine projected an image into the center of the hall. It showed a massive rift in space, glowing with horrible light. Things poured through it. Monsters made of metal and flesh. The devouring tide. The tide did not find this galaxy by accident, the architect said. They were summoned. A murmur passed through the crowd. 400 years ago, the Galactic Council conducted an experiment. They tried to open a door to another dimension. They hoped to find new resources, new territories, new power. Instead, they found the tide. The projection changed. It showed Council scientists working on a massive machine. It showed the rift opening. It showed the first tide creatures pouring through. The Council realized their mistake, the architect continued. But instead of warning the galaxy, they covered it up. They sealed the records. They killed the scientists who knew the truth. And when one species discovered the evidence, the Council found a way to silence them. The projection showed Earth. It showed the vote to exile humanity. It showed Ambassador Somi standing alone in the Council chamber. Humanity discovered the truth, the architect said. That is why they were exiled. Not because they were primitive, not because they were unstable, but because they knew what the Council had done. The hall erupted, screaming, shouting, accusations. 100 species turned on the Council members, demanding answers. Vrani sat in silence for a long moment. Then, slowly he stood. His ancient body trembled, but his voice was clear. "It is true," he said. "Everything the machine says is true. We opened the door. We brought the tide. And when the humans found evidence of our crime, we destroyed them to protect ourselves." He paused. Something like tears formed in his black eyes. "We told ourselves it was for the greater good. We told ourselves that revealing the truth would cause panic. We told ourselves that humanity was acceptable loss." He lowered his head. "We were wrong. We were monsters. And we deserve everything that has happened to us." The confession was broadcast across the galaxy. Every species heard it. Every civilization learned the truth. The Council had not just exiled humanity, they had created the apocalypse. They had doomed trillions to protect their own pride. Chancellor Yunji raised her hand. The chaos slowly quieted. "The past cannot be undone," she said. "But the future can still be saved. Humanity offers our technology to any species willing to fight. The war against the tide is not over. Together, we can seal the rift and end this nightmare forever." She looked at Vrani's. "Even you can fight if you choose. Even you can find some small redemption." Vrani's looked at her with something like gratitude. He nodded once, and across the galaxy, 100 species prepared for the final battle. 50 years had passed since the truth was revealed. The war against the devouring tide had been long and terrible. Entire star systems had been lost. Species had been pushed to the edge of extinction. But slowly, painfully, the galaxy had pushed back. Now, at the edge of known space, the final battle was about to begin. Admiral Heiyun Quan stood on the bridge of the flagship Eternal Memory. She was 13 years old, with sharp eyes and her ancestors' smile. Her great-great-grandfather had led humanity into exile. Now she would lead them to victory. Around her, a fleet of 200,000 ships waited. Humans flew beside aliens who had once despised them. Former enemies now fought as brothers. The tide had taught the galaxy a simple lesson. Divided, they would all die. United, they had a chance. Admiral, her tactical officer, reported, "The rift is directly ahead. The tide is forming a defensive perimeter." Heyoon looked at the view screen. The rift hung in space like a wound in reality. Horrible light poured from it. Even from this distance, she could see the monsters gathering. Millions of them, perhaps billions. The largest concentration of tide creatures ever recorded. "They know why we are here," Heyoon said. "They know this is the end." She opened a channel to the fleet. "This is Admiral Kwan. 350 years ago, my ancestors were cast into darkness. They were told they were worthless. They were told they would die forgotten. Today, we stand at the edge of forever, surrounded by allies who once called us enemies. Today, we end this war." She paused. "Many of us will not survive. Many of us will never see home again. But our children will live in a galaxy free from fear. Our sacrifice will be remembered for eternity. That is worth any price." She closed the channel. "All ships," she commanded. "Begin the attack." The battle was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Human dreadnoughts crashed into tide swarms. Alien fighters wove between tentacles of living metal. Missiles made of compressed starlight tore holes in the enemy lines. Dr. Hambeek, now 112 years old, watched from a science vessel far behind the front lines. Her life's work was about to be tested. The weapon she had built from architect technology, the device that could seal dimensional rifts forever, was powering up. 60% charged, her assistant reported. Hyun watched the battle with old, tired eyes. So many were dying. So many would never come home. But if the weapon worked, no one would ever have to fight the tide again. Admiral Heyoon's flagship pushed toward the rift. Enemy creatures slammed against its shields. Explosions rocked the hull. But she did not stop. "Get me closer," she ordered. "Admiral, if we get any closer, we will not survive the weapon's activation." Heyoon smiled. It was the same smile her ancestors had worn when they walked into the hollow. The smile of someone who had already made peace with death. "I know," she said. "Do it anyway." The flagship pushed through the tide's defenses. It reached the edge of the rift, closer than any ship had ever gone. Behind it, the weapon fired. A beam of pure white light shot across the battlefield. It struck the rift. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the rift began to close. The tide creatures screamed. Not with voices, but with some deeper vibration that shook the fabric of space. They tried to escape, to flee back to their home dimension. But the rift was closing too fast. Admiral Heyoon watched as reality healed itself. The wound that the Council had opened 4 centuries ago was finally being sealed.
"Tell Dr. Heyoon,"
she said quietly, that her weapon worked. The rift collapsed. The shockwave hit the flagship. Heyoon closed her eyes. When the light faded, the rift was gone. The tide was destroyed. And the flagship was nothing but scattered atoms. The galaxy mourned Admiral Heyoon Kwan. They built statues of her on 1,000 worlds. They named stars after her. They told her story to their children. But life continued. On the site of the old council station, a memorial was constructed. It was a simple wall made of black stone. On it were carved 17 million names, the humans who died during the exile. And beside them, the names of every being who died because of the council's crime. Elder Jisoo Kong, now 120 years old, gave the dedication speech. Her voice was weak, but every word was clear. "They permitted us to leave in silence," she said. "They thought silence was weakness. They thought silence was surrender. They did not understand. Silence was preparation. Silence was patience. Silence was the sound of humanity deciding what kind of people we would become." She paused, looking at the names carved in stone. We could have destroyed them. "When we returned, we had the power to wipe every species that wronged us from existence. We chose not to. Not because we forgave them, not because we forgot, but because revenge is not justice, punishment is not healing. We chose to be better than what was done to us. The crowd listened in silence. That is our legacy, Jisoo said. Not the technology we discovered, not the wars we won. Our legacy is the choice we made when we had all the power in the universe and we chose mercy. In a detention facility far from the celebration, Ronnie sat alone. The machines keeping him alive would function for centuries more. He had asked to die many times. Each time, he was refused. His punishment was not death. His punishment was memory. He would live and remember, and watch as the galaxy moved on without him. A guard brought him a screen showing the memorial ceremony. Ronnie's watched Elder Jisoo speak. He watched the names scroll past. He watched the galaxy celebrate the species he had once tried to destroy, and for the first time in 2,000 years, Ronnie's wept. On a distant world in the hollow, a school stood in a field of alien flowers. The flowers were purple and gold, and they swayed in a gentle breeze. Children played on the grass, their laughter echoing across the valley. Inside, a teacher gathered her students for the afternoon lesson. She was old, with silver hair and warm eyes. Her name was Somi, a clone descendant of the original ambassador. Today, she said, we are going to learn about the exile. The children listened with wide eyes as she told the story. The council, the vote, the hollow, the return, the war, the victory. When she finished, a young boy raised his hand. Teacher, he said, why did not we destroy them when we came back? They were mean to us. They deserved it.
Oh.
Somi smiled. It was the same smile that her ancestor had worn 350 years ago, standing at an airlock, looking back at Counselor Vrani's. Monsters destroy, she said. Humans remember, and memory is heavier than any weapon. The boy thought about this for a long moment. Then he nodded, not fully understanding but accepting. Outside, the flowers continued to sway. The children continued to play. The sun continued to shine, and somewhere across 4,000 worlds, humanity continued to remember, not with anger, not with hatred, but with the quiet certainty that they had become something greater than their enemies had ever imagined. The silence was finally over. But the memory would last forever.